Hello, I'm Michael Rega. This is Module 5 for EMC 400. We're discussing the strengths and weaknesses of our department here at Bartow County in the greater Atlanta area. We'll be talking with 3 other co-workers, and for our department, this is actually a very interesting dynamic. As of a few weeks ago, we were told that our department will be privatizing from a government-based system. We are separate from the fire department, even though we do respond to calls together. So there is a lot of animosity towards some of our leaders, also our actual leadership. We were actually never provided a formal notice. There was an informal meeting, and there has been a lot of discontent. But even with this discontent, we have found areas that we felt that as a service we exceeded. And as you will see with some of the interviews, there was, I would feel, a large quantity of positive patient care leadership exhibited within the department. Some of the failures, though, especially that we've read about in this module in our book, some of the major failures occurred from a lack of strategic planning. Bartow County, even though we've been around since 1971, in my approximately 10 years working here, I've never seen a 1, 2, 5, or 10-year plan. I've never been provided any strategic goals or objectives to accomplish. It's always been last minute, or whose plan do we want to choose and why. There was a severe lack of that strategic planning. And I believe that in part led to some of the possible over budgeting. As within the past, I believe they said it was 8 years, we lost $13.5 million. On average, it was about $2 million a year. And our annual budget was roughly $4 to $4.5 million, depending upon which fiscal year it was. And I think some of this lack of strategic planning played into the fact that we had no strategic financial planning. And also some of our projects, like pet projects, like lake safety, special events, I feel that possibly led into the poor planning and strategic planning for this. But as you'll see from some of the interviews, that there was a lot of good in this department. We had a lot of strengths to come forth. And unfortunately, though, the lack of strategic planning really led to the downfall of this service becoming a private-based entity. Being merged with Metro Atlanta Ambulance, which I do work part-time for already. So for me, I have varying opinions about how the service was run, but I have no animosity towards who's taking us over. And I really have no animosity towards any of the county commissioners about this, because I understand now, especially from this class, seeing where strategic planning plays such an important factor to really bring out those strengths and opportunities. Whereas the weaknesses here in this situation were vastly outnumbering a lot of the strengths that we had. So I completely understand his position, unfortunately, for how wonderful the service was. It really was, unfortunately, had to go the way of privatization for a little bit. Hopefully things can be reorganized and it might become private again. I mean, a public service, or it might become integrated with the fire department. And hopefully that this will be represented by the following interviews. And I believe a lot of them will share the same opinion that I have. Here we are with Sergeant Blake Griggs from Bartow County EMS. We're kind of talking about the strengths and weaknesses of our department and kind of some of the dynamic we are going through. Obviously, that special change that I've talked to you about where we're being privatized. So obviously, many times when you do have a change like that, there's a lot of negatives to it, but the service still had a lot of good qualities. What were some of the strengths that you felt that we had here at Bartow County?
What I really liked about it, and the whole reason why I came to a county service in the first place, was that, I grew up like in that family type of public safety community. And you don't really get that with a private service. You don't really get that with a hospital-based service. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying typically I haven't found it. So here, that's what I kind of liked about it. I mean, nobody was here because we were making all the money. Nobody was here because of any of those type things. Like, it was all kind of family oriented.
Okay. And being an officer, what would you say would be a strength, looking at it from an officer's perspective that you had? Was it the availability of maybe students coming in, that you'd be able to see more of the possibly the new hires that you could draw from classes and recruit?
Getting the new hires, getting to see them as students, you know what I mean, before they get hired was a plus. They kind of, it's kind of a two-way street. We get to try them out, they get to try us out, see if it's a good fit, and then before they apply, they already know.
Okay.
And so I always like to get to, be in that aspect of it, of getting them to ride with me as students, getting them to ride with me as new hires. So.
Okay. Now, what's kind of some of the, we would say, some of the things that would not be a strength here, something that was kind of more of a negative aspect towards the service?
I don't think that, long term, like generally speaking, that rules did not apply across the board to everyone. And so kind of a gift and a curse. We're kind of on that good old boy system, and that helps you sometimes, and unfortunately it can harm you as well.
Now, being in an officer position, was there any kind of a mission statement or kind of like a visionary goal that we had, like a 1, 2, 5, or 10-year plan?
Not that was ever put out to me, no.
Okay. Would that, you think, have been something that would have been beneficial here?
I think if it would have been put out and abided by, yeah,
Okay.
But just putting one out and being like, and then never checking up on it or never trying to follow through with it. Then.
Okay. Looking at some of the dynamic here, that's kind of a mix of mainly rural, but somewhat of a kind of, you do have some of the more of a city aspect here with Cartersville being a more high population density. With the system, it's a static system. What benefits did that have, being a static system and also having a diverse demographic population?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Kind of with like running 24-hour trucks versus where you see a lot more inner cities running 12-hour systems.
With the call volumes like they are, I get why they do 12-hour systems, elsewhere, where the call volume's just astronomically high, but here I've never seen the point in it. Yeah, we got some faster stations than normal, but I've never had it to where it's just unbearable, where I felt like I just wasn't going to make it.
But also, though, with having the rural community, having that station in that location, does that help you pre-plan and pre-position a vehicle in an area that might have an extended response time?
It does. Okay. Have it like, for example, Rydal, stuff that we're 15 miles from, having the availability to put a truck closer, which is something that I don't think a private service is necessarily going to look at.
I would agree with that. I appreciate your time and helping me with this interview, and thank you, and I appreciate it.
No problem.
Hello, we're talking with Brian Somers here about Bartow County EMS and kind of some of the strengths and weaknesses that this department has. And one thing that's really notable that our department has compared to some of the others is that we generally run 2 paramedics on the truck, but fire is only first responders. We do have a few EMT and paramedic firefighters, but they still operate at the first responder level. What are some strengths about having 2 medics on the truck?
Oh, you can always bounce stuff off of each other. If one's got more experience in one particular area or the other, I can always bounce. Like if you're my partner, I can say, hey, what do you think of this? This is what I'm looking at. What do you think? And you can go with me, or you cannot. And it makes my decision easier. That's for one thing. Overall, it just helps. I think it helps overall patient care in general because you can do just as much as I can do on scenes. We can split up, handle different situations. I would agree.
Now, I know fire is a first responder, and how does that, generally on scenes, like say a really bad call, what do? I know for my experience working, they sometimes will help you. They know how to assemble equipment, and they do drive. So how's that a benefit?
It's great that, they get everything together for you. They get some basic information. They'll come out and meet you. At least here, they come out and meet you and really are pretty much jam up on getting you to their level what they can do. And they're great with getting and helping you. What you ask them to do, they do it, so.
Do you feel, though, sometimes the way that this system's structured with that, is it a weakness at all?
It can be, because sometimes it's a bit nice to have a higher level on scene who can actually take care of more stuff on scene before you get there, especially if they're waiting for the transport unit for a while. They can handle stuff, they can give drugs that the patient needs now before we get there, and well, shoot, make my job easier, keep the patient from getting worse and actually start correcting the patient's issues. and then we can take over.
Now that's something you've had experience with, working kind of on a more inner city based service.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, and you've noticed that's where you've had what, 2, 4 extra paramedics on scene?
Oh yeah, I can
Fire?
make it vary from, well, actually very little do I ever, where I was, have a less than one on a scene, but usually there's at least one who can start doing stuff for me and turn it over to me.
So being a more rural based service, that's kind of where this becomes almost where that weakness also is a strength by having 2 medics
Sure.
up front. So, but it's very interesting dynamic, it sounds like, and I appreciate you taking time to kind of talk about this.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
So we've completed 2 of the 3 interviews, and we've kind of run into a very odd hiccup because of our situation of being privatized, and both services I actually work for are involved in this. No one else actually was willing to come talk from Bartow County. They were worried about, the fire side has been warned and also threatened with disciplinary action. They cannot say anything about basically EMS. A lot of the people with the EMS side are a bit worried about pay and actually being able to have a job, and saying anything that would potentially put any of that in risk. And when I've attempted to talk to people from Metro Atlanta Ambulance Service, they've actually been issued a company-wide email with being explained that they are not to talk to anybody from Bartow County until after the merger between the 2 services, and that they could face any disciplinary action for talking to any of the employees or discussing it in any kind of public forum or potentially public forum, since this is going to, in theory, be listed on YouTube as an unlisted video. It is still out there, and because of their social media policies, they do not feel comfortable talking about it. It's very unfortunate that we get put in this position, and I think on both sides for this service, that is a weakness, that having to have these policies breeds a certain level of fear, and it's a weakness because then does the employee become a stronger employee to carry forth, those strengths? And I feel it actually detracts from it, and that would be both services and even the fire department here. I understand there's a lot of business things involved in that, and I understand some of the backstory on why they've had to do this, because people, of course, run to the news. We live in the age of there's a camera, like there's a cell phone on every corner taking a video. So I see the understanding of this, but it also brings people to the point of being fearful and overjudging their actions, similar to HIPAA, where we call and ask about a patient that we just dropped off, and I can't talk to you because of HIPAA, because we instill such a level of fear. And I think that is a weakness of the medical system as a whole. And moving forward as leaders, that's something we're gonna have to find a way to build our strengths, look at our weaknesses and tame them, rein them back in, or correct them or fix them. And that goes back into our tactics, and that's an opportunity that we have. And I apologize that we've only been able to obtain 2 people from either one of my services that I work for. It's a very unfortunate position that we're in right now, and I hope that I've brought you the most objective point of the strengths and weaknesses of Bartow County EMS. And looking forward to next module, and we will speak to you then. Thank you.